Guys, I am not at school. I guess it's worst case scenario, or it's not worst case scenario because I don't know that we have COVID, but daughter's boyfriend did test positive for COVID. Then we went as a family to get tested because of contact tracing. And so we're waiting to really see if my daughter has COVID or not. And if that's the case, then I might not be back in school for a while. So we're going to try this. You guys have built this slideshow. I'm going to present it, and I'm going to embed some questions in it. We're going to do a shorter one today because I know you have a 2-hour delay, so less than 30 minutes. We're just going to give it a try, see how this works for you, and I'm going to post it on Edpuzzle. Anyway, she did wake up with a cold this morning, or what seemed like a cold, so we don't know if those are COVID-like symptoms or not. We went and got the test, and she seemed to feel a little better this afternoon. So as soon as that test gets back, and hopefully it'll be negative, I can get right back in school. This is just going on with your slideshow here, though. Keep in mind that you guys built this. Seemed to be a little bit more of a struggle this time around. I don't know if you guys are getting tired of building these or not. But this is on Alexander the Great. This is what we're going to wrap up our Greek chapter with, and then we're going to move on to ancient Rome. And what I think I'm going to do here is I'm going to just go through each slide. I'm going to present each one, talk a little bit about it, and then maybe I'll embed a question on Edpuzzle with it. So we'll see how that works. We'll see if you guys like it or not. And then moving forward, just in the event that the school shuts down, for example, we're going to have to do something, and as opposed to just sending you a video, like one video after the next on a documentary, I'd rather us try to build slides at home, and then I will present them back to you if I can get enough kids cooperating on that, and then we'll do kind of Edpuzzle videos through this slideshow. So anyway, it'll be a way for me to teach. It'll be a way for you to learn, and it'll be something a little bit different than just having a worksheet or watching a documentary or something like that. So hopefully that'll keep us all a lot more actively engaged, and it'll be a lot more like just a regular class. So anyway, let's get to your presentation. This is about Alexander the Great. We've already talked a little bit about him. You've seen some videos on him, and so he's considered the first real European conqueror of the of one of the largest empires in the world, and he's well respected and well regarded by many future emperors and kings such as Julius Caesar and Napoleon and even Hitler himself. So this is Alexander and the Hellenistic era. His impact on the world definitely had an impact on the Western world, and some might say on Asia as well. So this is chapter 4, lesson 5. And get your slide to work here. So this first one's by Riley Jeffrey. And you can see a nice picture of Alexander the Great there, and a picture of some of the Persian women. This is kind of like a East meets West situation. And basically, what we're talking about here is Macedonia. So Macedonia is where Alexander the Great comes from, and it was a little kingdom to the north of Greece. A lot of the Greeks viewed the Macedonians as kind of hillbillies and rednecks, and so you had the towns of Sparta, Athens, and Thebes, and Corinth, and they viewed this kind of small kingdom to the north as just the backcountry rural guys. And the backcountry rural guys eventually race up to conquer those city-states. So the Greeks viewed the Macedonians as barbarians. They were rural people organized in groups. Macedonia emerged as a powerful kingdom. And so Riley's question is, what did the Greeks view the Macedonians as? Gods, barbarians, neighbors, or dogs? And very nice slide by Riley Jeffrey. Great pictures, Riley. Okay, so here's our next slide. I'll move my icon around a little bit here so it's not blocking everything. There we go. All right. So in 359 BC, Philip II came to the throne. He built a powerful army and turned Macedonia into a chief power. A great admirer of the Greek culture, he wanted to bring together all of Greece under Macedonia. The Athenians fought Macedonia with other Greek states. Battle of Chirone, the Macedonians crushed the Greeks. All right, so again, what's happening here is Macedonia is kind of this backwater country area. And they're actually overrun by the Persians in this war between Athens and Sparta and Persia. And so as time goes on, the Greek city-states defeat the Persians. They liberate those areas that are conquered by Persia. But then those city-states turn on each other. They start fighting each other. And as they start to fight each other, Athens and Sparta both lose their kind of power, their grip over Greece. And Macedonia starts to build and become bigger. And so in time, the Macedonians develop not only an expert form of phalanx, but they also have flanking cavalry on either side of their phalanxes, which made them particularly deadly because one way to defeat a phalanx was to outflank it on either side. And if you have a good cavalry on either side of those phalanx, it makes it very hard to flank that phalanx. So they had a kind of a superior fighting technique in which they could defeat the other Greeks and unite the continent, or unite the country, the kingdom. All right, so who crushed the Greeks? The Athenians, the Spartans, the Macedonians, or no one? And good job again, Riley. Okay, so here's you can see kind of the bust head of Alexander. He was idolized by the Greeks and later the Romans, because the Romans, the empire that Alexander formed, they conquered the western end of that empire. They unified everything from Egypt to Greece and all those kingdoms along the coastline, the east coast of the Mediterranean. So this is by Shadi Gephardt. Philip, Alexander the Great's dad, ended the freedom of the Greek city-states. He then he had a vision that if he could unite all the Greek city-states, he could harness that power and turn on the Persians and attack the Persians. So he wanted to invade Asia before he could. He was killed. Now there's some like debate on how he was killed. Was he assassinated by Alexander? Was he assassinated by a rival? Was he assassinated by Alexander the Great's mother? Nobody really knows. I think the leading theory is his mother killed him. Now, why would she kill him? He had several wives. He had several children by those different wives, and Alexander happened to be his oldest and most capable son. Now, he did have an older brother, but that older brother had very low IQ, and something was wrong with him. And so it fell to Alexander to lead the kingdom. So as other wives had children, Alexander's mother was fearful that maybe someone would overthrow him. And so the theory is she had Philip assassinated. So who did Philip want to invade? Mr. Field's house, Shadi's house, Asia, or Britain? Well, I mean, I think, it's going to come down to Asia or Britain, right? So we got a 50-50 there. Go ahead and have a look at it, see what you think. Okay, so how old was Alexander when he became king? 28,301? Was he 13? Was he 27? Was he 20? Or I don't know. Well, let's find out. Alexander the Great was only 20 years old when he was granted king of Macedonia. When he was young, his dad used to take him to military campaigns and taught him basic military leadership. This is true. In fact, Alexander the Great's, he was a teenager in one of his first battles. He fought against Thebes, and he was part of it. He was his dad's cavalry commander protecting his flank at the time that they fought in Greece. And he made some bold moves against the Theban forces and helped defeat Thebes, and they ended up wiping out probably one of the most well-known phalanxes in Greece at the time. So when his father died, he wanted to complete his dad's vision, but he also wanted to avenge Greece or Persia's burning of Athens in 480. So, there's this very real animosity between the Persians and the Greeks. And there's this feeling that the Persians came in and conquered part of Greece and did a lot of damage to Greece, and these Greek city-states were able to form a league and defend against the Persians. Okay, so next slide. All right. So the next slide by Babe Brady. By the way, the tomb in the background is thought to be maybe perhaps Alexander the Great's tomb, and he did die at the age of 33. Alexander the Great was taking a chance in attacking the Persian Empire. Although weakened, it was still a strong state in the spring of 334 BC when Alexander entered Asia Minor with an army of 30,000 men, both Macedonians and Greeks. The cavalry, which would play an important role as a striking force, was numbered about 5,000. So I guess the gamble that he's taking is he believes that Greeks are superior fighters, and that had been proven in several battles versus the Persians. The Persians feared the Greek tactics and the Greek phalanx. But the gamble he's taking is that Persia is a massive empire. So Greece is still a relatively small kingdom. And taking 37 men and 5,000 horses into Persia is, although it's a big army compared to what Persia has, it's relatively small. So how many men did Alexander enter Asia Minor with? Well, you can answer that question on Edpuzzle. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay. And give me just a second here to move this picture. Okay, now that's a great picture in the background. I wonder if that's an actual photograph of the city of Alexandria. So this was by Diana Ponce. Alexander freed the Ionian Greek cities from the Persians and defeated a large Persian army at Issus. In 332 BC, he had Syria and Egypt under his control. He built Alexandria as the Greek capital of Egypt. It became one of the most important cities in Egypt and the Mediterranean world. It was one of the first cities named after Alexander. So Alexander is initially very successful. He marches into Asia Minor, which we call Turkey. From Turkey, he marches down the east coast of the Mediterranean, and then he invades into Egypt. And in many of the places he goes, at least in the eastern part of the Persian Empire, he's welcomed as a hero. And the reason he's welcomed as a hero is because none of the peoples that he conquered were Persian. So the Persians themselves were considered the conquering empire. And so in many places like Egypt, Alexander was looked at as a liberator. Now, as he goes beyond Egypt and beyond Babylon, he ceases to become a liberator. Then the people east of Babylon view him more as an invader. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But when did Alexander have Syria and Egypt under his control? So was it 330 BC, 331 BC, 332 BC, or 326 BC? And again, I believe that's a picture. I'll have to ask Diana when I get back, but I think that's a picture of the modern-day city of Alexandria on the coast of Egypt. Okay, this is from Grace. So in 331 BC, Alexander fought the decisive battle against the Persians at Guatemala. Soon, Alexander ruled the Persian Empire. They moved a lot over the next 3 years. His soldiers refused to travel with him, so he went home. He led his soldiers through the desert where many died from thirst. Okay, so the story is that eventually he fights this big, massive battle in which he breaks the Persian army. They outnumbered him like 3-1. He breaks the Persian army, kind of using a little bit of deceit, and he gets the Persian army to kind of overexpand as they try to outflank him, and then he just drives really hard into the center where the king is and focuses all of his weaponry and all of his focus on the Persian emperor. And so when Darius sees the Greeks coming in mass for the center, and then his flank had kind of gone out too far on the sides, the center just crumbles. They break the center, and the Persians break and run. So from that point, Darius his army's broken. The Persian will seems to have broken, and Alexander just marches from one city to the next, right? And he's trying to hunt down Darius because what he wants ultimately is to replace Darius. He wants to become the Persian emperor. So where did Alexander fight the Persians? India, Guatemala, Egypt, or Syria? And that's not the country of Guatemala. That would be the Battle of Guatemala. Okay, and in the background you can see a very famous piece of mosaic work created for Alexander the Great. And there he is with his armor. So this is Alexander's success presented by Big Tooth. So Alexander showed his success through his military tactics. He was able to fight through all types of terrains and conditions. Alexander was always looked up to Achilles, having a copy of the Iliad and a dagger under his pillow. Iliad is a poem made by Homer. So Iliad's that story of Troy and the Trojan horse, and Achilles was the main hero of the Greeks in the Iliad. So, essentially, let me just say a couple of things about Alexander the Great. First, he was a very amazing fighter. He grew up training in the martial arts. He fought in the front lines. When he charged Darius's lines, he led that charge, right? And so often he led in the front lines of battle. But his campaign, he's so successful, success after success, he's marching his army farther and farther east. What are they doing? They're getting farther and farther away from home. And they're getting richer and richer as they march. So what they want to do is they want to go home, and they want to enjoy their riches, and they want to enjoy their wives, because now they have Persian wives. And he marches all the way to India until his men are finally like, you know what, we've had enough. We're ready to go home. So they pressure him into going home, and he decides to return to Babylon, which he makes his new capital. And he decides that he's going to start other military campaigns. Unfortunately for Alexander, and I'm sure we'll get to this in other slides, is that we don't really know what happened to him, but at 33 he dies. So he's like a bright shining star that just kind of burns out very quickly. There's all kinds of different it's just too far back in history to really figure out what happened. We don't have the body of Alexander the Great. We think we know where his tomb is, but we don't have. All we have is written work. So some people suggest that he died of alcohol poison. Some people have suggested that he was assassinated, and other people believe that he died of his wounds. So we just don't know. So how did Alexander the Great show his success, his cheesy eating competition victories. He organized home, his huge pecs, or his military tactics. All right, here we go. So Alexander's legacy by Dahlia. So Alexander added to Greek and Macedonian rule over a vast area. Alexander's successor used force and claims to create military monarchies to intimidate him. Mainland Greeks remained committed to the idea of city-states, and the creation of monarchies became part of Alexander's political legacy. So, unfortunately for Alexander, he was just a personality in and of himself, right? And so, because of that personality, once he dies, his empire literally falls apart. Now, here's the thing about that empire. It basically becomes a bunch of Greek-run kingdoms. So from the time of his death until the time that Rome conquers the region, there are about a half a dozen Greek kingdoms that begin competing with each other. And those Greek kingdoms are all trying to become the next, like their kings are all trying to become the next Alexander the Great, right? So you have about a half a dozen what we call Hellenistic kingdoms with Greek kings and Greek royal families. Some of them were related to Alexander. If they weren't related to Alexander themselves, they were the descendants of Alexander's generals. And so upon Alexander's death, what happens is his generals split up the empire. All right, so what became part of Alexander's political legacy? Layla's toes, the creation of monarchies, Riley's megamind, the mainland Greek idea of city-states. So yeah, if we look at Greece itself, the city-states still remain relatively independent. And so the city-states formed the leagues. There was a kingdom of Macedonia. There was a kingdom in Turkey. There was the Seleucids in Persia. There was the Ptolemies in Egypt, and they had all kind of broken apart Alexander the Great's empire. Okay, Hellenistic culture. Move this again. Okay. Hellenistic culture by Silverfish. So Alexander was also a cultural legacy as Greek language, architecture, literature, art, and religious diversity spread throughout parts of Asia and North Africa. So Greek culture blended with aspects of Eastern culture to become a new Hellenistic culture. So what we get here is that, I mean, look at the statue in the corner of this slide. I mean, that is just a beautiful statue. And we've talked about a little bit about, how as an artist are you going to carve a beard out of stone? I mean, that would just take a tremendous amount of detail and work. You look at the hair, you look at the eyebrows, the eyes, the nose. Of course, the nose is broken off over time because that statue is like 2,300 years old. But the ram's horns, all of it together. It's just a masterpiece that probably took somebody possibly years to make. Okay, so that culture that the Greeks are bringing to the table, other people in the ancient world admired that. They admired the Greek math. They admired a lot of the Greek art and what the Greeks were doing. But at the same time, if we look at Egypt, if we look at Babylon, if we looked at Persia, if we looked at India, they all have their own things going on too. And so they're all contributing to art. They're all contributing to science. And what Alexander, really one of his probably biggest legacies is by unifying these civilizations and creating one massive empire that stretched from Greece and Egypt all the way to India, is you get kind of a synthesizing of different culture and once you get, this is what we call cultural diffusion. And what cultural diffusion is it's It's a combination of you're borrowing the best aspects of another culture. And so what we start to see is Greek culture being influenced by Asian culture. We see Asian culture being influenced by Greek culture, India and Egypt contributing to that, and that is that's Hellenistic culture. That's the Hellenistic age. All right, so the Hellenistic age or era. So between 1600 BC and 133 BC in ancient Greece, Alexander decided to create a new era called the Hellenistic era. Well, I don't know if he definitely was very pro mixing the cultures. I don't know that he actually named it the Hellenistic era. We call it Hellenistic era because the Greeks called themselves Hellen. They thought that that was their name for themselves. And so Hellenistic just means Greek-like culture, right? Or Greek-like era. So which was a combination of Greek and Asian culture. So what is the era called? Hellenistic era, something else era, something else era. Okay, so we're gonna have to really work. Freshmen and sophomore. We're really gonna have to work on our questions. You guys are doing pretty good on your summaries. You need to develop your question making skills a little better. All right, so the Hellenistic era. So Alexander made a new age called the Hellenistic era. Hellenistic is a word derived from Greek, which means to imitate Greeks. So it's Greek imitators. There we go. Which is a good way to describe an age. What was the new age called? I don't know. Hellenistic era, flower. Again, great summary. Probably need to work on those multiple choice questions. What if let me go back a slide. What if we said instead of, if I can go back a slide, well, I guess not. All right. Well, we'll try something else here in a minute. Oh, there we go. What if instead of, like, I don't know, we put, like, the Greek era or in the Egyptian era, right? Same with all of your questions, right? Having Mr. Fields as an answer, I respect that. I think you guys are honoring me or kind of being funny with that, but we probably better find a better way to make a multiple choice question. You know that Mr. Fields is probably going to be a wrong answer on that, right? So Hellenistic kingdoms. Alexander created an empire by his conquest, which fell apart soon after his death by 300 AC AD. I think it's BC. Should be BC. By 300 BC, any hope of unity was dead. 4 Hellenistic kingdoms emerged as the successor to Alexander. The 4 kingdoms were Macedonia in Syria, the east, the kingdom of Pergamum in the west, in Western Asia Minor, and Egypt. What were the 4 Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged? Macedonia, Angkor, Tyre, and Durnus. Egypt, Arathrath, Helad, and Vanderlyn. Macedonia, Syria in the east. The kingdom of Pergamum in West Asia Minor, and Egypt. Okay, now that was a good multiple choice question. Those are more like what we probably need to be making. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of wrap it up here because I don't know how long your class is going to be on a 2-hour delay, but I'm just going to make this a 30-minute video because I'm really not sure how long it's going to be. Let me know what you think about this. It's a little bit different than me teaching about it. I'm going to go ahead and post it on Edpuzzle, and I'll upload some questions to it. Those questions I'm going to base on your slideshow, and then you can give me some commentary on it. All right, guys, good luck. Thank you, and we'll hopefully see you sooner rather than later.